The valley is darkening. Can you still hear the call? Have you ever felt something inside urging you to stop? Even without knowing why, your heart races, your thoughts swirl, and you sense that something is deeply wrong, as if it's a warning from God. Yet you continue, ignore it, postpone, until the heavens fall silent. This is the story you need to hear today. It's not just any story. It's a fable, one that speaks directly to the soul. A sheep, yes, a simple sheep, but one who saw what no one else saw, who felt what the flock ignored, who tried with all her heart to warn her brothers before the valley darkened completely. This fable is in truth about me, about you, about all of us who once heard the divine whisper, but fell silent, who saw signs, but pretended they were coincidences, who felt the wind change, but remained distracted. God speaks, and when he speaks, it's out of love. But there are moments when his silence is the last resort, when the heart becomes so hardened that even heaven can't penetrate. How many times has God tried to warn you? Through pain, loss, a dream, a verse? How many times have you felt deep down that something needed to change, but didn't? This story is a mirror, a warning, a call. The sheep knew, but the flock mocked her. She's old, they said, always sees danger where there is none. But she didn't want to be right. She wanted to save. She wanted to see everyone safe when the valley's shadow arrived. And you? Have you ignored the sheep God sends? Have you been deaf to his voice? Have you strayed from the paths of light? This video is your warning. It might be the last. It might be the one you needed to hear before the eternal silence. But before we continue, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who also needs to awaken. You never know how much this can save a life, perhaps even yours. Stay with me until the end, because in the next words, something in you may be reborn, like a sheep returning to the shepherd, before the valley darkens completely. Chapter 1. The whisper of the wind and the sheep who felt too much. At the top of a flowered valley, where the sun still touched the grass tenderly, lived a sheep named Míria. Unlike the others, Míria wasn't known for the whitest wool or the strength of her legs. But there was something about her that everyone noticed, a restless look, as if she were always listening to something others couldn't hear. Míria was sensitive, while the flock was distracted by the sweetness of the grass, or the joy of sunny days. She looked at the horizon with a tightness in her chest. She felt the wind change, noticed the birds' songs silencing, observed how even the insects disappeared before dusk. "Everything's fine, Míria," the others said. "You worry too much." And she smiled, but her heart whispered otherwise. One morning she woke up startled. The sky was still blue, but there was something strange in the air. A deep silence, as if the valley itself were holding its breath. Míria quickly got up and went to the highest rock. From there, she looked over the fields and saw, far away, almost imperceptible, a shadow approaching. It wasn't a common storm. It was a dense, silent darkness that swallowed everything it touched. She ran down and tried to warn, "Something is coming. We need to leave. We need to heed the call." But they laughed at her. Here comes dramatic Míria with her stories. The shepherd wasn't nearby. The flock was on its own that day, and the group's leaders, the oldest ram and the sheep, who claimed to be a prophet, preferred to keep things as they were. Let's trust the sun. It's shining, isn't it? God is with us. Míria wanted to believe that too, wanted to silence her soul and pretend it was just a silly fear. But the wind said otherwise. She returned to the rock and prayed like never before. "Lord, if what I see is true, give me strength to warn, even if they mock me, even if they expel me. Don't let me be silent." And at that moment, a leaf fell from above, landing on her snout. It was a dark, dry leaf from a tree that was still green. It was the sign she needed. Míria went down once more, went from sheep to sheep, pleaded, cried, asked that at least some listen. Some hesitated, but most mocked. And there, faced with indifference, she felt something cut her heart, not the scorn, but the fear that this was indeed the last warning. Have you ever felt that? Tried to alert someone and were ignored? Noticed signs others don't see? Maybe you're Míria. Maybe God is trying to speak, not just to you, but through you. but the flock, always too rushed to listen. Chapter 2. The mockery of those who think there's always time. Míria walked among her own with an anxious look, but no one took her pain seriously. She's too old, some said. Just another false alarm, others murmured. And so, with laughter and disregard, the flock ignored the only heart that still felt the approaching danger. The field was beautiful. The sun still shone, and that's what they used as an excuse. Look around, Míria. God is blessing us. Everything is peaceful. But Míria knew that not all silence is a sign of peace. Sometimes it's the prelude to the storm. And she felt, with every fiber of her being, that this storm would be different. She tried once more, went to the oldest ram, known for leading the group. A shadow is approaching. We need to move to the shepherd's shelter. It's past time to leave this field. He laughed arrogantly. Míria, your faith is becoming hysterical. I know this valley better than anyone. I've seen many clouds pass. This one will pass too. And he turned his back, indifferent. Míria didn't give up. Sought out the young ones, the more curious. Spoke gently. You still have time to choose. Don't wait to see the darkness with your own eyes. Trust those who have already seen. But the young ones laughed. You always see things, Míria. You're getting too old to play prophet. And they returned to running through the fields, full of confidence. A false confidence, built on the comfortable routine and the habit of ignoring signs. The flock's mockery deeply hurt Míria, not because of the humiliation, but because of the certainty that many who now laughed would cry later. But there would be no more time. How often does this happen to us too? How often does God send someone, a word, a verse, an unexpected pain, and we prefer to laugh, doubt, postpone? The world today is full of voices like Míria's, voices that cry out in the valleys of the soul. Return to the shepherd. The shadow is coming, but they're ignored by those who think they'll always have another tomorrow. The problem is that one day, tomorrow doesn't come. That afternoon, Míria distanced herself from the group, climbed the rock again, tears in her eyes, and said softly, Father, I did everything I could. Now I can only trust in you. And at that moment the wind changed, blew colder, denser, and at the bottom of the valley, she saw the first tree fall. The shadow was closer than everyone imagined. Chapter 3. When the shadow arrived, it was too late to run. Dusk arrived like any other. The orange sky painted the mountains in the background, and the flock grazed carefree, as if nothing could touch them. But Míria couldn't find rest. The wind, once warm, now blew with a strange coldness. The birds no longer sang, and the trees began to creak. She climbed again to her watch rock, and then she saw. It was no longer a shadow on the horizon. It was a dark, thick mantle descending like smoke over the valley. But it wasn't smoke. It was like an absence of everything. Absence of light, of sound, of life. Míria's heart raced. Lord, help me, she prayed. They need to see now before it's too late. She ran to the flock with her last strength. The shadow has arrived. Please listen. Run to the shelter! But it was too late. The first to notice were the lambs, who ran toward the trees. But the shadow was faster. One by one, the animals were swallowed by that veil. There was no sound, no scream. They just vanished. Fear then took over. The old ram tried to organize an escape, but there was nowhere to run. Everything not under the direct light of the sun disappeared. Some tried to hide behind rocks. Others threw themselves into the shallow waters of the stream. But the shadow passed over, enveloped everything, swallowed without haste, without noise. Míria, already distant, wept. I tried, Lord, I tried. And at that moment, a gentle voice echoed within her, and I saw. I heard your voice when no one else did. Come, Míria. There is a refuge prepared for those who heed my call. Following that voice, Míria ran along a forgotten trail, between rocks and thorns, to a small wooden enclosure. It was the old pastor's refuge, long unvisited. There was light, and there was peace. She entered, and the shadow stopped at the door. It didn't dare to enter. Inside there were a few others, the small, the fragile, those who listened in time. Míria hugged them and cried, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. She was safe, not because she was stronger, but because she listened and obeyed. And you? What do you do when the shadow arrives? Wait for the world to darken or run to the light while there's still time? The warning was given, but the response always depends on who listens. Chapter 4. The shelter of the few and the silence of the shepherd. Inside the old enclosure, time seemed to have stopped. A soft light filled the space, not from the sun, but from something deeper. Peace permeated the area like an invisible perfume, and the fear that once dominated Míria dissolved like mist before the truth. She looked around. View had arrived. Some lambs, a limping goat, a timid little lamb, and 2 silent sheep, all with frightened eyes but alive. There were no screams, no rush, only silence. A different silence from the one that enveloped the valley. Not the silence of death, but of reverence. A silence that said, "Now God speaks." Míria lay down, exhausted, and began to pray silently. "Lord, where are you?" She wasn't seeking explanations. She just longed for the presence of the one who had seemed absent for so long. Then she heard. Not words. It was like a touch within her soul, a gentle warmth in her chest, a certainty that defies explanation. The shepherd was there, invisible yet present, silent yet attentive. He didn't shout. He didn't punish. He didn't say, "I told you so." He simply embraced. Míria understood then. The shepherd had been speaking all along. Through the wind, the signs, the restlessness in her heart. But most chose to listen to louder, more pleasant voices. The shepherd, on the other hand, speaks softly, so only those who truly want to listen can hear. The shadow outside didn't cease. It was like an endless night, and the flock, now reduced, remained in the shelter, waiting. Some wept for those who stayed behind. Others just trembled. But Míria felt something growing within her, a firm, serene, real faith. She was no longer just the sheep who warned. She was now the one who trusted, who rested even without understanding, who had learned that the shepherd's silence is also an answer. Have you ever felt that silence? Cried out and heard nothing in return? Perhaps God is speaking, not with noise but with presence, not with explanations but with peace. The shelter was made for those who listen, for those who obey before understanding, for those who prefer to follow the shepherd's voice, even when it seems small compared to the world's roar. That night, there, in the forgotten enclosure, the light remained on, because where there is faith, darkness cannot enter. Chapter 5, the new dawn and the mission of the sheep who remained. The night was long. Míria couldn't tell how many hours had passed, but in the shepherd's shelter, time seemed to have a different rhythm. It was as if God had paused the world to tend to the souls of the few who had listened. Then suddenly, the silence was broken. A soft sound like a bird's song in the distance filled the air. A timid glow began to appear through the cracks of the shelter. The shadow was retreating. The dawn's light was finally returning to the valley. The sky looked different, cleaner, deeper, as if the Creator himself had cleansed the earth with his hands. The few in the shelter stepped out in silence. They walked slowly, treading respectfully on the renewed ground. It was the same valley, and yet it wasn't. There were traces, empty places, silence where voices once were. But there was also hope. The shadow was gone, and with it, the opportunity for many. Míria looked around. So much had changed, except one thing, her mission. She now understood that the calling she felt, that ache in her chest, wasn't just a warning. It was a purpose. God didn't make her feel to suffer, but to warn. Even if ignored, she climbed the rock once more. The same one where she had prayed so many times. But this time not to cry out for help, but to give thanks. And as she looked over the valley from above, she heard that gentle voice in her heart again. Now go, Míria. Teach those who remain. Care for the little ones. Show the way to those still lost. And never stop listening to my voice, even when all others fall silent. Míria descended from the rock with firm steps. She was no longer seen as crazy. The few who remained now listened to her with respect. She had become a shepherd without a title, a prophetess without fame, a silent guide shaped by time, by pain, and by obedience. She knew other shadows would come, that the world, quick to forget, would spiritually slumber again. But she also knew that as long as God had a sheep willing to listen, there would be hope. And you, what will you do now that the shadow has passed? Return to the comfort of distraction? Or become like Míria, a listener, a warner, a protector? Because perhaps God is raising you as a new voice in the valley, not to shout, but to whisper the truth many have forgotten. Conclusion, the shepherd's voice and the last chance. Míria's story, the solitary sheep who heard before all others, isn't just a fable. It's a faithful portrayal of what happens when heaven tries to alert us, and the human heart insists on delaying. Many wish to hear God's voice, but few are willing to obey when it says, change now, return now, don't wait any longer. In the Bible, Jesus says, my sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. John 10:27. It's not the crowd that recognizes the shepherd. It's the sheep who have learned to listen with their hearts, even when all senses suggest otherwise. Like the people in Noah's days, many mocked until the rain began to fall. Like the foolish virgins in the parable, they waited to seek oil when it was too late. Like Jerusalem before Jesus, they didn't recognize God's visitation. And what do all these stories have in common? The warning came first. It always does. Because God is just, but also patient. He warns, he waits, he calls. But there comes a time when he falls silent, not because he gave up, but because time ran out. Míria tried, she wept, she pleaded. She wasn't heard by many, but she was faithful. And her faithfulness saved lives. As Jesus taught us, the gate is narrow and few find it. But it's open, still is. You're hearing this message by chance? No, you know that. This story reached you because God still sees you, still loves you, and is calling you. Perhaps this is your last warning. Perhaps this is the whisper before the silence. Perhaps this is the shepherd's voice, calling you back. Don't wait for the shadow to consume everything. Don't say, I'll change tomorrow, because tomorrow might be too dark to find the way. Today is the time. Now is the valley, and the shepherd stands waiting. If this message spoke to you, comment here. I heard the shepherd's voice. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs to hear. Because perhaps, just perhaps, this is someone's last chance.